Hey everybody, welcome back to Groundhog's Garage. My name's Jim, and today we're back working on Frankenstein. The engine has some lean codes on both sides, left and right bank, and I thought I'd go ahead and replace the intake gaskets because that's a very popular problem with these. The rubber starts breaking down, the gaskets flatten out and starts leaking in air, and then you end up with these lean conditions. Before I get started, this model year has an EGR pipe that goes into the intake manifold just behind the throttle body, and after watching a couple other videos I see that some guys have trouble getting the EGR out. The bolts get rusted into the adapter that holds the EGR, so before I get started I'm going to do that, see if I can get the bolts out, and then if I can get the bolts out we'll continue on with the project. So let's hit this with the Ugga Dugga gun and see if I get lucky. Wow. Yeah, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're lucky. Let's try this one. How about that? Well, which raises the question, what would you rather be, good or lucky? Yeah, it's not too bad in there either. Huh. Let's just take this off for now. Not so lucky on that one. I wonder if I can get this out of the way enough. I can get this hose out. Sometimes if you can leave stuff alone, you leave it alone. It could take longer to fix those bolts than it would be to put the intake gaskets in. It's probably going to be a big no, but let's try it anyway. I think it's worth a try. I've got enough room to get that intake manifold out. That'll save me a lot of work down there. Pet peeve of mine. So we got 10 millimeters down here. We got a 10 millimeter up here. We got 8 millimeters holding this, literally the same bracket that this is holding. Why can't they just make them all either 8 or 10? Why? Remember the video with the mouse? It looks like he's got a little home up here too. I have to get my vacuum cleaner. What's that disease you can get from mice? Hantavirus or something like that? Yeah, I don't need that. Not now. Now I got to take off the PCV hose and a little hook tool, because Lord knows that's probably cemented itself there. There we go. Pull that out of the way, and here we have the fuel pressure regulator. And I guess this hose is rather expensive, so be careful. Don't break it. I didn't pull the fuse for my fuel pump relay. I'm not going to. I don't have to worry about pressure because my fuel lines are leaking. So I'm sure if there was any pressure, it's been relieved by now, I would imagine. I would think, I would hope. But so now here's the two fuel lines. Let's get this out of the way here. Pull this over here. And you've got these two clips here. And you take those out. And I think you can see that. Yep. And here's what the clips look like. You don't want to lose those. And this is the kit I'm using. Fuel and transmission line disconnect tool set from Summit Racing. They are not a sponsor. My God, I wish they were. How sweet would it be? Summit Racing was a sponsor for your car habits. So you push that in there like that, and as the theory goes, this should slide off the back, and it looks like it wants to. Come on. It's moving. I think it's moving. It looks like it's moving. That was a 3/8. Yep, came right off. Sweet. All right. Fuel line's disconnected. EGR's out. Let's unplug the, first let's get this wiring loom out of the way. All right, so let's take a look at how we get these, the wire harness off these injectors here. So let's take a little pick here. There's a little clip right there. I think you can see that. And you pull this up and out it comes. How easy was that? So I've got the injectors out of this side. I might not have hit record, so you might not have seen it. But when you take it out, there's a little clip in there. You just press on it and the plug slides out. So now I'm just taking the rest of the wires off the wire harness, off the intake. Got the idle air control motor disconnected, the throttle position sensor disconnected, the alternator disconnected. I got this other pulled off here, whatever this thing is, PVC maybe, and not sure what these are back here, but one's probably the temperature sensor. Get those disconnected and get this harness out of the way. Flashlight. This off to the side. And get the rest of these injectors unplugged. So the last intake manifold I did was a 1970 Pontiac Le Mans, where I took off the factory manifold and put on an Edelbrock. The factory intake was a cast iron one, and it was so heavy when I went to pull it, I popped my back and couldn't move for a week. I don't think I'm going to have that issue here. Quit working so hard. There's a cooling hose or heating hose, whatever you want to call it. It goes under the throttle body and comes out the other side. So we need to disconnect that here and disconnect it under here. And then this will pop off. Projects like these, the actual doing the intake gaskets is easy. It's getting the bolts loose and the hoses off and things like that that slow you down. This is probably an hour and a half, 2-hour project. By the time you get done messing around with the hoses and stuff like that, it turns into 3 or so. Get her up. So I got a lot of cleanup ahead of me. Glad I left the vacuum cleaner out. What a mess. Looks like a squirrel's been living in there. Or a mouse, I guess, huh? Yeah, let's vacuum that out. I'm gonna get some paper towels and stuck them in the ports so I can start scrubbing on this, and we'll get that cleaned up. So I just got all the ports, or just about all the ports, clogged here or blocked with some paper towels. But I wanted to see if you could hear the noise in the background. The tree chipper. We had a tornado here the other night. Trees down all over the place. Here's a brief clip. It's crazy just seeing all those telephone poles laying in the middle of the road like that. Well, my goodness, doesn't that look a lot better than it did? So I took all the paper towels out of the ports. I took my air gun and blew out all the bolt holes just to make sure nothing, you know, there was no fluid in them, so it didn't hydrolock the bolts or anything. And now we're going to step over here and start working on the intake a little bit. There's a lot of leakage here on this one. But honestly, it looks like there's so much dirt built up that maybe the dirt was keeping it from leaking more than anything else. So, I mean, it's crusty. Some guys give the whole intake a bath, but that exceeds the scope of my project. I'm going to do the one on my daily driver. I may spend a little more time before I make it more antiseptic, but for Frankenstein here, this exceeds most reasonable servicing. And just start the softening up process. Ran out of brake clean, so now I use a carbon throttle body cleaner. And I'm sure you know this already. The intake's plastic. So while you want to get it clean, you don't want to gouge the plastic any. Just take your time. I'm going to give this thing a shot of throttle body cleaner and start moving back towards putting it back together. Alright, we're all set to go. And just remind you, I didn't take the EGR all the way out. I just kind of was able to disconnect it there, so I didn't have to deal with the exhaust manifold. And I'll start working that thing back in here. and zip this thing back up. It's all looking good. A lot different than when I started, eh? Just looking at everything before I get started. Everything's out of the way. Whatever's tie wrap down needs tie wrap down. Injector plugs are out of the way. We're all good. Get the, let's see, what is that? The brake hose, yep. Brake vacuum hose on there. And another plug down here. Perfect. Nice. I can't remember if I mentioned it, but I did take an air gun and blow out all the intake bulb holes just to make sure there wasn't any fluid in them. And if this is your first LS intake video, these get torqued down to 89 inch-pounds. And we'll get them snugged up here first. These have little keepers on them to keep them from coming out of the intake, but somehow this one slipped out. There you go. A little persuasion. And I do see one thing I forgot to do, and that's to lace this thing through. Am I going to regret that? Yeah, let's just take the fuel rail off. Or loosen it. So basically this hose goes underneath the fuel rail, or to between it and the intake. It probably would have been alright on the outside, but I like to keep my things as close to factory as possible. Okay, I got her all buttoned back up. That went pretty easy actually. So I'm just going to go through the checklist with you. I got the EGR bolted back on, plugged in. I got all the injectors plugged in. Double check that. I got the throttle cable and the cruise control hooked up. I've got the PCV hose hooked up. I've got the fuel regulator hose hooked up. Temperature, I think that's a temperature sensor. That's hooked up. I'm not sure what this goes to. It looks like an intermediate connector that goes up here somewhere. Alternator, throttle body position sensor, idle air control motor, PCV valve. What else we got? I got all the injectors hooked up over here. I got the fuel pressure regulator on the other side hooked up. I got the brake booster attached in the back. Not fuel lines. I don't got the fuel lines hooked up, so I got to do that yet. And once I get that, we'll I think we're pretty much ready to give her a test start here. Now I got the fuel lines reconnected. The only thing I haven't done is torque down the bolts to the intake manifold, but I'm kind of excited to hear it run. So I'm going to set the camera up here, and you can watch me fail spectacularly or have a raging success. See any fuel squirting out anywhere. Loping a little bit. I thought I did something disastrously wrong, and I was like, now I'm mentally double checking everything and realized I didn't put the bellows back on, so it wasn't bringing any air through the mass airflow sensor. So look at it now, idle and perfect. Purring like a kitten. So I'm going to put the top back on here and have some final thoughts on this. Okay, so runs fine. Definitely needed doing. Some final thoughts. It's not that hard. The cleaning will take some time. I probably got about 4 hours in this. An hour to take it off, an hour to put it back on, but then 2 hours to clean it. So you'll want 2 or 3 cans of brake cleaner, maybe some throttle body cleaner, paper towels, stiff brush, and as far as using paper towels, don't put them in the trash in the house in case your garage gets hot and you end up with some spontaneous combustion, because that's why you need a bunch of rags of brake cleaner on it. So all in all, nice afternoon job, and didn't take any really special tools outside of the gas line disconnecting tools, and the coolant hose through the throttle body was kind of tough to get off. Outside of that, I can't say it isn't a project worth doing. It was, yeah, I think most people, if you got wrenches, it probably falls into your wheelhouse. So if you got any thoughts, leave them below in the comment section. What you might have done differently, what I could have done differently. Again, I didn't have to take the EGR off. I was able to get that out of the way, and that wasn't a problem at all. And again, you might want to be careful though, because if your pipe is rusty going into the exhaust manifold, it might break on you, and then that would be bad too. So alright, so I think I'm done with this, and don't do like I did and go to run it and forget to put this on, because then you'll be disappointed, and then if you don't think of it soon enough, you might start tearing into your car again before you realize you're not getting any air through your mass airflow sensor. So alright, well, I appreciate you coming along, and hopefully you learned something. I know I did, and look forward to seeing you again. If you like the video, like, share it, subscribe it, and I hope to see you soon.